The chapel stood ready, flowers perfectly arranged, empty chairs waiting for family that would never arrive. I checked my phone for the 20th time, forcing a smile as Liam's mother offered to stand in for my own. The hollow ache in my chest deepened when I saw it. The Instagram post that shattered everything. My mother, brothers, and father laughing at a beachside restaurant while I walked alone down the rehearsal aisle. Years of making excuses for their absence at graduations, promotions, birthdays, all leading to this ultimate betrayal. But when Grandpa Joseph slipped that weathered envelope into my trembling hands later that night, whispering, "It's time you know everything," I never imagined the truth would rewrite not just my wedding day, but my entire identity, revealing that the family that abandoned me wasn't truly mine to begin with. The drive to Willow Creek Chapel felt like something out of a dream. The winding country roads were lined with oak trees, their branches forming a canopy overhead as sunlight filtered through the leaves. I glanced over at Liam, his profile illuminated by the golden afternoon light, and felt a flutter in my chest. In just 2 days, he would be my husband. "What are you thinking about, Evie?" Liam asked, taking his eyes off the road for a moment to look at me. His smile still made my heart skip a beat, even after 4 years together. "Just that I can't believe it's finally happening," I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I've dreamed about this weekend since I was little." The chapel came into view as we rounded the bend, quaint and picturesque with its white steeple and ivy-covered walls. It was exactly what I'd envisioned when Liam proposed last year. The perfect place to start our forever. "It's beautiful," Liam whispered, as if reading my thoughts. After checking into our rooms at the adjacent inn, I hung my wedding dress on the back of the door. The ivory lace caught the light streaming through the window, casting delicate patterns on the hardwood floor. I ran my fingers over the fabric, wondering what my mom would say when she saw it. She had been too busy to come dress shopping with me months ago, some emergency at work, she'd said, but I hoped she would love it as much as I did. I checked my phone for the 5th time in an hour. Still no messages from Mom or my brothers, Jack and Nathan. They were supposed to be here by now for the rehearsal dinner. I dialed Mom's number, listening to it ring several times before going to voicemail. "Hey Mom, just checking to see where you guys are. The rehearsal starts in 2 hours, and I was hoping you could see the dress before we head to the chapel. Call me back, okay? Love you." I tried Jack next, then Nathan. No answer from either of them. A knot began to form in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling away. They were probably just stuck in traffic, or maybe Mom's flight from Chicago had been delayed. Nothing to worry about. Liam knocked on my door an hour later, looking handsome in his navy suit. His smile faltered when he saw my expression. "Still haven't heard from them?" he asked gently. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're probably just running late. You know how my family is, always on their own schedule." "Fashionably late," Liam agreed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. But I could see the concern in his eyes. His own parents had arrived yesterday, helping with last-minute preparations and treating me like I was already their daughter. When we arrived at the chapel, our wedding coordinator, Melissa, was arranging flowers at the altar. She glanced at her watch when she saw us. "Is everyone here? We should really get started soon." "My family's running a bit behind," I explained, checking my phone again. "Nothing. Maybe we could wait just a few more minutes." Melissa hesitated, glancing at the other guests who were already seated. Liam's parents, his sister Sarah, our college friends who'd flown in from across the country. "I'm sorry, Evelyn, but we really need to begin. The caterers are set up for dinner at 7, and the Reverend has another appointment after this." I swallowed hard and nodded. "Of course. Let's start." Walking down the aisle alone during the rehearsal felt wrong. This was supposed to be a practice run, with my dad walking beside me, my mom watching proudly from the front row, my brothers grinning at me as I passed. Instead, Liam's mother, Margaret, stood in for my mom, and the pews reserved for my family remained empty. I forced a smile as I reached Liam at the altar, but my chest felt tight. He squeezed my hands, his eyes full of understanding. "You okay?" he whispered.
"Ivy fine, Elid."
After the rehearsal, while everyone chatted in the church garden, I stepped away to check my phone. Finally, a message from Mom. "Hope it's all going well. We'll see you soon." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by confusion. The message was vague, no explanation for why they weren't here, no apology, no estimated arrival time. I texted back immediately. Rehearsal's over. Where are you? Is everything okay? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. At the rehearsal dinner, I'd arranged the seating carefully. A place for Mom beside me, spots for Jack and Nathan across from us, and one for Dad, even though he and Mom had been divorced for years and barely spoke to each other. All 4 seats remained empty as servers brought out the first course. I laughed too loudly at our best man's jokes, drank 2 glasses of wine in quick succession, and pretended I didn't notice the pitying glances from Liam's relatives. When his aunt asked where my family was, I made up a story about car trouble. It sounded hollow even to my own ears. During dessert, I excused myself and stepped outside, dialing my dad's number. It went straight to voicemail, just like earlier.
Dad, it's me.
I don't know what's going on, but no one showed up today. The rehearsal, the dinner, everything. Please call me back. Out of habit, I opened Instagram, scrolling mindlessly to distract myself. And then I froze. There, posted just an hour ago, was a photo of my entire family. Mom, smiling broadly, with her arm around Jack. Nathan making a silly face. And Dad, who was supposed to be in Seattle on business, raising a glass of wine. The caption read, "Perfect evening at Ocean Wave. Nothing better than family time." Ocean Wave was a beachfront restaurant 3 hours away from the chapel. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't delayed. They had chosen to be somewhere else on the night of my wedding rehearsal. I must have made a sound, because Liam appeared beside me, his face concerned. When he saw what I was looking at, his expression hardened. "Evie, I need to be alone," I whispered, pulling away from his reaching hand. "Just for a little while." I walked back to the chapel, which was now dark and empty. The silence enveloped me as I sat in one of the pews, staring at the altar where I would be getting married in less than 48 hours. Tears began to fall, hot and fast, as the weight of the evening crashed down on me. This wasn't the first time my family had missed an important moment in my life. They'd skipped my college graduation, claiming a last-minute emergency that later turned out to be a weekend in Las Vegas. They'd been absent from my first art show, my promotion celebration, countless birthdays. But I'd always made excuses for them, always forgiven them. This time felt different, more deliberate, more cruel. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear the chapel door open until it creaked loudly. I quickly wiped my face, not wanting anyone to see me like this. "Evelyn." A familiar voice echoed through the empty space. "Grandpa." I turned to see my grandfather, Joseph, making his way slowly down the aisle. At 78, he moved more carefully than he used to, but his eyes were as sharp and kind as ever. "I thought I might find you here," he said, lowering himself onto the pew beside me. "You always did like churches. Said they felt safe." I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. "You came." "Of course I came. Wouldn't miss my only granddaughter's wedding for the world." He paused, studying my face. "You saw the post, didn't you?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Grandpa sighed heavily. "You weren't supposed to see that. Your mother." He trailed off, shaking his head. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a weathered envelope, yellowed with age. "It's time you know everything, Evie." "What is that?" I asked, eyeing the envelope with trepidation. "Something I should have given you a long time ago. But I made promises I shouldn't have made." He pressed it into my hands. "Read it. Then we'll talk." With shaking fingers, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was instantly recognizable, my mother's elegant, flowing script. But the words, they weren't what I expected at all. "If Evelyn ever finds this." The letter began abruptly, not with my name, not with "Dear Evelyn," but as if I was being discussed in the third person. It was never meant for me. My mother had written this to someone else, possibly Grandpa. My eyes scanned down the page, catching phrases that made my stomach clench. "She doesn't deserve the truth," one line read. "She was just a baby. What good would it do her? No. I looked up at Grandpa, who was watching me with sad eyes. Keep reading, he encouraged gently. I turned back to the letter, my hands trembling so badly now that the paper rustled. My mother wrote about guilt, about a secret she'd been keeping from me my entire life. We agreed it was for the best, she wrote. She has a good life with us. Why complicate things? I don't understand, I whispered, looking up at Grandpa again. What is she talking about? Grandpa ran a weathered hand over his face. There's been a rift in our family for a long time, Evie. Your parents, they didn't want you to know certain things about your childhood. They feared it would change how you saw them. What things? I demanded, my voice rising. What have they been keeping from me? Grandpa pointed to the letter. Keep reading. It's all there. I forced myself to continue, though each word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. And then I reached a paragraph that made the world tilt beneath me. After the car accident, when we almost lost her, I had no choice. Richard stepped up when he didn't have to. He's been her father in all the ways that matter. Why dig up the past now? Richard. My father's name. Except, the letter suggested he wasn't my biological father at all. I don't. My voice broke. I was in a car crash. Grandpa nodded slowly. You were 5 years old. Your mother was driving. You don't remember? Fragments of memory suddenly surfaced. The screech of tires, the crunch of metal, a kaleidoscope of shattered glass. The wail of ambulances. A man yelling. My mother crying. Don't take her? I'd always thought those were just nightmares. Who is my real father? I asked, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Grandpa hesitated, fidgeting with his wedding ring, a nervous habit he'd had since Grandma died. I've known parts of the truth for years, he admitted. I was sworn to secrecy. Your mother was scared of losing you, but also selfish. She wanted to control the narrative. Why did nobody ever think I deserved to know? I stood up suddenly, anger replacing the shock. This is my life. My identity. How could you all keep this from me for 27 years? I wanted to tell you, Grandpa said, his voice breaking. So many times. Especially when you started asking questions as a teenager about why you didn't look like your brothers, why your father was always so distant. I paced in front of the pew, the letter clutched in my hand. Does Liam know? Has everyone been lying to me? No, Grandpa assured me. Liam doesn't know. Just your parents, me, and your Aunt Delia. Aunt Delia, my mother's sister whom I rarely saw because they'd had a falling out years ago. Another family secret, apparently. I sank back onto the pew, overwhelmed. I need to tell Liam. Of course you do, Grandpa agreed. He's going to be your husband. There shouldn't be secrets between you. When I returned to the inn, Liam was waiting in my room, his face tight with worry. He stood as soon as I entered, but didn't approach, giving me space. My family didn't show up because they chose not to, I said flatly. They were at a restaurant together. All of them. Liam's jaw clenched. I saw the post.
I'm so sorry, Evie.
That's not all. I held up the letter. Grandpa gave me this. It's from my mother. Apparently, the man I've called Dad my entire life isn't actually my biological father. Liam's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt as I explained everything Grandpa had told me. He listened quietly, not trying to fix it or dismiss it. When I finished, he simply said, "Whatever's next, I'm with you." I collapsed into his arms then, crying until his shirt was damp with tears. He held me without speaking, just being there, solid and real when everything else in my life suddenly felt like quicksand. Later that night, Grandpa came to my room with a folder. Inside was a copy of something he'd kept hidden for years, an alternate birth certificate. The name in the father field wasn't Richard Callahan. It was Elias Monroe. Your biological father, Grandpa explained. He was a good man. He fought for you after the accident, tried to get custody. Your mother and Richard shut him out completely. Is he still alive? I asked, staring at the unfamiliar name. As far as I know, yes. Last I heard, he was living about an hour from here. Grandpa hesitated, then added, If you want to understand who you are before you say, I do, go find him. But the wedding can wait if it needs to, Grandpa said firmly. This is your life, Evie. Your identity. You deserve to know the truth before you start this new chapter. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, the letter and birth certificate on the nightstand beside me. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I need to postpone the wedding, I told Liam over breakfast. We sat in a quiet corner of the inn's dining room, speaking in hushed tones. Just for a little while. Until I figure this out. I expected resistance, disappointment, maybe even anger. Instead, Liam reached across the table and took my hand. I understand, he said. And I'm with you, whatever you decide. You're not upset? He smiled sadly. I want to marry you, Evie. But I want you to be whole when we do it. If finding this man, your biological father, is what you need, then that's what we'll do. Tears pricked my eyes. How did I get so lucky with you? I ask myself the same question every day, he replied, squeezing my hand. Liam's family was understanding when we told them. His mother hugged me tightly and whispered, "Take all the time you need, sweetheart. We'll be here." They agreed to contact the guests and explain that the wedding was being postponed due to a family emergency, which wasn't far from the truth. My family, on the other hand, didn't even ask why. When I called my mother to inform her of the postponement, her response was terse. If that's what you want. She didn't mention missing the rehearsal dinner, didn't apologize, didn't ask if I was okay. It was as if she knew I'd discovered the truth and was retreating behind walls of indifference. The day after what should have been my wedding, I drove to my Aunt Delia's house in Springfield. I hadn't seen her in years, not since a Christmas gathering when I was 20, where she and my mother had gotten into a screaming match that ended with Delia storming out. No one ever explained to me what that fight was about. Now I suspected I knew. Delia's house was small but charming, with flower boxes beneath every window and wind chimes hanging from the porch. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting for me. "Evelyn," she said, her eyes sad. "So they finally told you." "Not exactly," I replied. "But I know about Elias Monroe. I know he's my biological father." She sighed and stepped back, gesturing for me to enter. "Come in. We have a lot to talk about." Over tea in her sunlit kitchen, Delia confirmed what the letter had suggested. My mother had been in a relationship with Elias Monroe before she met Richard Callahan. It was brief, but intense, a summer romance that no one expected to last. "Your mother was 21, Delia explained. Elias was 23. He was a musician, played jazz piano at clubs around the city. Mom and Dad didn't approve. They thought he was too bohemian, not stable enough. But they fell in love." I asked, trying to picture my straight-laced mother with a jazz musician. Delia smiled sadly. Head over heels. I'd never seen your mother so happy. But when she got pregnant, our parents intervened. They pressured her to go back to Richard, who she'd dated in high school. He had a good job, came from a good family, was suitable, according to Mom. And she just agreed? She gave up the man she loved because our grandparents told her to. Delia's expression darkened. Your mother has always cared too much about appearances, about what other people think. And Richard was willing to claim you as his own, to give you his name. Elias fought for her, for you, but she cut him off completely. Until the accident, I said quietly. Delia nodded. Elias never stopped trying to be part of your life. After the crash, when you were in the hospital, he showed up, demanded to see you. That's when it all came to a head. I tried to process this information, to reconcile it with the mother I knew, controlling, yes, but I'd always believed she had my best interests at heart. Now I wasn't so sure. Do you know where Elias is now? I asked. Last I heard, he was playing at a club called the Blue Note in Mapleton. That was a few years ago, though. I don't know if he's still there. Armed with this information, I spent the next day with Grandpa, tracking down leads. He called old friends who might know something while I searched online. The Blue Note still existed, and their website listed a weekly jazz night featuring local musicians. No names were mentioned, but it was a start. 2 days later, I found myself sitting at a small table in the dimly lit club, nervously twisting a napkin between my fingers. The place was half full, mostly with older couples enjoying the music and cocktails. A small stage occupied one corner, where a trio was playing bass, drums, and piano. The pianist was a man in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a focused expression as his fingers moved across the keys. When he finished the piece and the audience applauded, he looked up and smiled, then laughed at something the bassist said. That laugh, it was startlingly familiar. The same rich, throaty sound that erupted from me when I found something truly funny. During the break, I approached the stage, my heart hammering in my chest. The pianist was packing up some sheet music when he noticed me. "Great set," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Thank you," he replied, looking up with a polite smile that froze when he saw my face. He stared at me, confusion giving way to recognition, then hope. Are you? "My name is Evelyn Callahan," I said, extending my hand. "But I think you might have known me by a different last name once." His hand trembled as he took mine. "You're hers," he said quietly. "You're Sarah's daughter. I always wondered what happened to you."
Sarah.
My mother's name. Hearing him say it made this surreal situation suddenly, viscerally real. "Are you Elias Monroe?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded, his eyes never leaving my face. "I am. And you look just like your mother did at your age. Except for the eyes." A small smile. "Those are mine." We moved to a quiet booth in the back of the club, where we talked for hours. He told me about meeting my mother, falling in love with her, being devastated when she left him. He explained how he'd tried to be part of my life as a baby, but was shut out at every turn. "After the accident, I heard you were in the hospital. I rushed there, but your mother and Richard, they had security remove me. I tried to fight for custody, but without money for good lawyers and with Richard's name on the birth certificate." He shook his head. "I never knew if you'd survived. If you were okay." "I'm okay," I assured him, though I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Did you have other children?"
He shook his head.
"I remarried about 10 years ago.
Nancy.
She's wonderful, but we never had kids. I think, subconsciously, I didn't want to replace you." That statement hit me like a physical blow. This man, this stranger, had carried the loss of me for over 20 years. Meanwhile, the family I thought was mine had been living a lie, keeping me from knowing my true origins. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. "I feel like my whole life has been a fiction, like I don't belong to anyone at all." Elias reached across the table, hesitantly, and covered my hand with his. "You belong to yourself, Evelyn. No one can take that from you." As the night came to a close, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why now? After all these years, why did you come looking for me?" I told him about the wedding, the missing family, the letter. His expression darkened with each detail.
"I'm so sorry," he said.
"You deserved better than that." When we parted, he gave me his phone number and address. "I'd like to get to know you if you want that. But I understand if this is too much." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to embrace this new connection, this piece of my history that had been hidden from me. Another part was terrified of what it would mean for my relationship with a family I'd grown up with, complicated as it was. "I'm supposed to be getting married," I said. "We postponed the wedding, but—" "The man you're marrying," Elias said carefully. "Does he know about all this?"
"Yes."
"He's been incredible." Elias smiled. "He sounds like someone who loves you very much." He hesitated, then added, "If you want me there, at your wedding, I'll come. Or if you don't, I'll understand that too. I'll be whoever you need me to be." As I drove back to the inn where Liam was waiting, those words echoed in my mind. I'll be whoever you need me to be. No one in my life had ever offered me that kind of unconditional acceptance before. Not my mother, with her rigid expectations. Not Richard, with his emotional distance. Not my brothers, who followed my mother's lead in everything. Liam was waiting up when I returned, despite the late hour. I fell into his arms, emotionally exhausted. "I found him," I whispered against his chest. "I found my father." And Liam asked gently. And everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, it's all different now. I looked up at him. I don't know what to do next. Liam tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You don't have to decide everything tonight. We've got time. I nodded, grateful for his patience, for his steadiness in the midst of my chaos. I love you, I said simply. I love you too, he replied. All of you, whoever you turn out to be. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my room at the Willow Creek Inn as I packed my belongings. It had been 3 days since I'd met Elias, my biological father, and Liam and I were heading back to the venue to sort through the postponed wedding arrangements. My emotions were a tangled mess, relief at discovering the truth mingling with anger at the decades of deception. Ready? Liam asked, appearing in the doorway with our bags. His eyes were gentle, concerned. As I'll ever be, I replied, zipping my suitcase closed. The drive back was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. The countryside that had seemed so magical just days ago now felt melancholy, as if the landscape itself was mourning the wedding that should have been. When we arrived at the chapel, Mrs. Henderson, the caretaker, greeted us with a sympathetic smile. We've put all the flowers in cold storage, she said, leading us inside. And the Reverend says he's available whenever you're ready to reschedule. I nodded, unable to find the words to thank her. The chapel looked different now, smaller, somehow. The pews where my family should have sat seemed to mock me with their emptiness. Liam squeezed my hand. One day at a time, he whispered. We spent the afternoon making calls, rearranging plans, notifying guests. I was in the middle of speaking with the caterer when a familiar car pulled into the gravel driveway. My mother's silver Lexus. She's here, I said to Liam, hanging up abruptly. Do you want me to stay? He asked, already standing protectively close. I took a deep breath.
Yes.
Please. My mother entered without knocking, her Chanel perfume preceding her into the room. She looked immaculate as always. Not a hair out of place, her makeup perfect, her posture rigid. She clutched her purse like armor against her chest. We need to talk, she said coldly, not bothering with a greeting. I think we do, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Mom glanced at Liam, her disapproval evident. Privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Liam, I said firmly. He's going to be my husband. A flicker of something annoyance? Resignation? Crossed her face, but she nodded curtly and sat in one of the wooden chairs by the window, crossing her legs at the ankle. Your grandfather had no right to give you that letter, she began. It was private. No right? I repeated incredulously. No right to tell me the truth about my own life. About who I really am. You know who you are, Mom snapped. You're Evelyn Callahan. My daughter. Richard's daughter. Except I'm not Richard's daughter, am I? I pulled the birth certificate from my bag and laid it on the table between us. I'm Elias Monroe's daughter, and you've been lying to me my entire life. Mom stared at the document, her face paling slightly. Where did you get that? Grandpa kept a copy. He thought I deserved to know the truth someday. She made a dismissive gesture. Joseph always was too sentimental for his own good. Sentimental? My voice rose. You call it sentimental to believe I had a right to know who my real father is? Richard is your real father, Mom insisted. He raised you. He provided for you. Elias was. She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. A mistake. From a different time in my life. A mistake? The word felt like a slap. Is that what I am to you? A mistake. Mom's eyes widened. No, of course not. I just meant. You meant what? I demanded, anger surging through me. That my existence was inconvenient? That I was a problem you needed to fix? You were my mistake to correct, she blurted, then immediately pressed her lips together, as if wishing she could take the words back. The room fell silent. Even the birds outside seemed to hold their breath. Get out, Liam said quietly from behind me. Mom's head snapped up. Excuse me? You don't get to talk about her like she's a burden, Liam said, his voice low but firm. Not after everything you've done. This doesn't concern you, Mom replied icily. It concerns me because I love her, Liam said, moving to stand beside me. Which is more than I can say for you right now. Mom stood abruptly, smoothing her skirt. I see there's no reasoning with either of you in this state. Call me when you've calmed down, and we can discuss this like adults. There's nothing to discuss, I said, finding my voice again. You lied to me for 27 years. You kept me from knowing my own father. You made me believe I was someone I'm not. I protected you, Mom insisted. Elias wasn't fit to be a father. He was unstable, irresponsible. I met him, I interrupted. He seems like a good man to me. Mom froze. You what? I found him. We talked. He told me how you shut him out, how you and Richard threatened him, how you used your family's money to make sure he couldn't be part of my life. Her face hardened. He would say that, wouldn't he? Playing the victim. He always was good at that. Stop it, I said wearily. Just stop. I don't want to hear you badmouth him anymore. I've heard enough lies from you to last a lifetime. Mom picked up her purse, her movements sharp with anger. When you're ready to be reasonable, you know where to find me. She paused at the door. And Evelyn? Your brothers and I expect an apology for postponing the wedding without consulting us. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this has been? After she left, I collapsed onto the sofa, trembling with anger and exhaustion. Liam sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I shouldn't have spoken to your mother like that. No, I said. You were right. Thank you for defending me. Later that evening, I called the man who raised me, Richard. It felt strange not to think of him as Dad, but the words stuck in my throat now, tainted by deception. Did you know? I asked when he answered, not bothering with pleasantries. All this time, did you know you weren't my biological father? A long silence followed. Yes, he finally said, his voice heavy. I knew. Why didn't you tell me? Another pause. Your mother thought it was for the best. And I loved you like my own, Evie. I still do. I closed my eyes, torn between anger at the lie and gratitude for the man who had, in his own reserved way, been a father to me. I need time, I told him, to process all of this. I understand, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We should have told you the truth long ago. The next morning, Grandpa arrived at the inn, his face solemn. How are you holding up, kiddo? I shrugged. I'm still standing. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I've been thinking about the wedding when you decide to go forward with it. What about it? Your mother needs to own up to what she's done, he said firmly. She should make some kind of statement, an apology, before the ceremony. You can't let this hang over your marriage. I laughed bitterly. Mom? Apologize? Have you met her? She wasn't always like this, Grandpa said softly. Before your grandmother died, before the pressure to be perfect consumed her. He trailed off, shaking his head. But that's no excuse for what she's done to you. That afternoon, my brother Jack called. Unlike Nathan, who had always been Mom's perfect echo, Jack occasionally showed flashes of independence. Mom told us what happened. He began awkwardly. About Richard not being your biological father. And what did she say about keeping it from me my entire life? I asked. She said it was to protect you, Jack replied, sounding uncertain. That this Elias guy wasn't stable, that he might have hurt you. And you believe that? A pause. I don't know what to believe anymore, Evie. Have you considered asking me? Since it's my life we're talking about. Jack sighed. You're right.
I'm sorry.
Tell me your side. I did, explaining everything I'd learned from Grandpa, from Aunt Delia, from Elias himself. When I finished, Jack was quiet for a long time. I had no idea, he finally said. Nathan says you're blowing this up for attention, but that doesn't sound like you. It's not, I confirmed, hurt by Nathan's accusation but not surprised. I just want the truth. What are you going to do about the wedding? Jack asked. We're still getting married. Just not yet. And honestly, Jack, I'm not sure I want Mom there anymore. Or Nathan, if that's how he feels. Another long silence. I understand, he said eventually. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Evie. For missing the rehearsal, for everything. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my wedding dress hanging in the closet. It suddenly seemed like it belonged to a different person, the Evelyn who thought she knew who she was, who believed in her family despite their flaws. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Liam entered, a small smile on his face. I just got off the phone with Elias, he said. He's invited us to dinner at his house tomorrow night. A small gathering with some of his friends. He wants to play something for you. The next evening, we drove to Elias's modest suburban home. His wife, Nancy, greeted us warmly at the door. She was a petite woman with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Elias has been so excited, she whispered to me as she took our coats. He's barely slept. The house was filled with people, friends of Elias and Nancy, a few neighbors, and, to my surprise, Aunt Delia and Grandpa. They stood in the corner, deep in conversation, but looked up and smiled when they saw me. After dinner, Elias guided everyone into the living room, where his piano stood against one wall. He sat on the bench, adjusting the microphone stand someone had set up. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, he began, his eyes finding mine in the small crowd. Most of you know that I recently reconnected with my daughter, Evelyn. His voice caught on my name. And tonight, I'd like to play something I wrote for her. He titled the piece, Evie's Grace. The melody was haunting, starting softly and building to a crescendo before settling into a gentle, hopeful conclusion. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterward, as people mingled and talked, Grandpa pulled me aside, pressing another envelope into my hands. What's this? I asked, wary of more revelations. It's from me, not your mother, he assured me. I wrote it last night. I want you to read it before your wedding day, whenever that may be. Later, alone in my room, I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Unlike my mother's letter, this one was addressed directly to me. My dearest Evie, it began. By the time you read this, you will have discovered the truth about your past. I wish I could have spared you the pain of finding out this way, but perhaps it is better that you know now, before you begin this new chapter of your life. I want you to know that family is not determined by blood alone. It is built through love, through choice, through standing by one another in times of joy and sorrow. Your mother and Richard made many mistakes, but never doubt that they loved you, in their own flawed way. When your wedding day comes, I want you to walk yourself down the aisle. Not because there is no one worthy to accompany you, but because you got here by your own strength. You found the truth. You faced it with courage. And now you must move forward, not as the person they shaped you to be, but as the woman you have chosen to become. With all my love, Grandpa. I sat for a long time with the letter in my lap, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. Through the window, I could see the moon hanging low in the sky, casting silver light over the garden. Tomorrow would be the eve of what should have been my wedding day. Tomorrow, I whispered to my reflection in the mirror, I start fresh. Not as Evelyn Callahan or Evelyn Monroe, but as me, whoever that turns out to be. The day that should have been my wedding dawned with a gentle, golden light filtering through the windows. Rather than waking to the excited chatter of bridesmaids or my mother's fussing, I found myself alone in my room at the inn, the silence both peaceful and poignant. I decided to take a long walk before the sun climbed too high. The countryside around Willow Creek was beautiful in the early morning light, dew sparkling on spider webs strung between fence posts, birds calling to one another from the trees, wildflowers nodding in the gentle breeze. For the first time since discovering the letter, I felt a sense of clarity. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but they no longer consumed me. Instead, I felt a strange kind of gratitude for the truth, painful as it was. At least now I knew who I was, or rather, who I wasn't. When I returned to the inn, Margaret, Liam's mother, was waiting in the lobby. She stood when she saw me, her kind face creased with concern. "Good morning, dear," she said, embracing me warmly. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. It feels good to be honest, even if the truth hurts. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. I have something for you. She handed me a box tied with ribbon. Some of the guests who were coming to the wedding, they wanted you to have these. Inside the box were dozens of letters, handwritten notes from friends, colleagues, even a few of Liam's relatives I'd only met once or twice. Messages of love, support, belief in me. Read them, Margaret urged. Read them and remember that family isn't just the people who share your blood or your name. It's the people who choose you, day after day. I spent the morning reading each letter, tears occasionally blurring the words on the page. So many people cared about me, supported me, believed in me. It was a revelation after years of feeling somehow inadequate in my own family's eyes. By afternoon, Liam and I had made a decision. We would have our wedding after all, not the elaborate event we'd planned, but something smaller, more intimate, with the people who truly cared about us. Are you sure? Liam asked, his eyes searching mine. We can wait longer if you need more time. I shook my head. I'm sure. I don't want to let my mother's lies dictate my life anymore. I want to marry you, Liam. Today. We made hurried calls to the Reverend, to the few guests we wanted present, Grandpa, Aunt Delia, Liam's immediate family, our closest friends. And, after a moment's hesitation, I called Elias. I'm getting married today, I told him. It's not the wedding we planned, but I'd like you to be there. I'd be honored, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Henderson worked miracles, setting up the chapel in record time. By early evening, everything was ready. I stood in the small room at the back of the chapel, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The dress that had once seemed like a symbol of the perfect family wedding now felt like armor, a statement that I was moving forward on my own terms. A knock at the door announced Margaret, who had helped me with my hair and makeup. It's time, sweetheart. Are you ready? I nodded, taking a deep breath. I'm ready. As the chapel doors opened and the small gathering of guests turned to look at me, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. There, in the front row, sat Grandpa, his eyes shining with pride. Beside him was Aunt Delia, elegant in a blue dress. And at the back, standing rather than sitting, was Elias, his face a mixture of awe and gratitude. I took another deep breath and began to walk down the aisle alone. No father to give me away, no mother watching proudly from the front row. Just me, walking toward the man I loved, proud and strong in my own right. Liam waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving mine. When I reached him, he took my hands in his, squeezing gently. You look beautiful, he whispered. The ceremony was simple, but meaningful. When it came time for the vows, I spoke from the heart, adding a line I hadn't planned. You loved me not because I was whole, but because you saw the cracks and stayed. Liam's eyes glistened as he recited his own vows, promising to stand by me through whatever the future held. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the Reverend said, his voice warm. You may kiss the bride. As Liam's lips met mine, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. When we turned to face our small gathering of guests, I caught Grandpa wiping his eyes discreetly. Elias stood with his hands clasped together, as if in prayer, his face shining with quiet joy. The reception was held in the garden behind the chapel, string lights twinkling in the trees as darkness fell. During a lull in the conversation, I stood and tapped my glass for attention. I want to thank you all for being here today, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion welling in my chest. This isn't the wedding we planned, but in many ways it's better. Because today I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when truth breaks everything. Glasses were raised in response, murmurs of agreement rippling through the small crowd. As I sat back down, Liam leaned over to whisper, I'm so proud of you. Later, as music played and people danced on the small patio, Grandpa approached me, a troubled look on his face. Your mother drove by earlier, he said quietly. She didn't come in, just watched from the road for a while, then left. I nodded, unsurprised. Part of me had hoped she might come, might apologize, might try to make things right. But another part knew better. She had made her choice, just as I had made mine. As the evening progressed, I noticed Elias standing alone at the edge of the garden, watching the dancers with a wistful expression. On impulse, I walked over to him. "Would you dance with me?" I asked, extending my hand. "A father-daughter dance?" His eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." As we swayed to the gentle melody, Elias held me as if I might break, his shoulders shaking slightly with suppressed emotion. "I never thought I'd get this," he whispered. "To see you grown up, beautiful, happy. To dance with you at your wedding. I'm glad you're here," I told him honestly. "I have a lot of questions, a lot to learn about you. But I'm glad we have time for that now." When the song ended, Elias stepped back, wiping his eyes unabashedly. "Your husband seems like a good man." "The best," I agreed, looking over at Liam, who was chatting with Aunt Delia, his smile genuine and warm. As the night drew to a close and guests began to leave, Grandpa pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Evie," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "So proud of the woman you've become." "Thank you for giving me the truth," I whispered back, even though it hurt. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You didn't lose a family today, Evie. You found the one you deserved." As Liam and I left the chapel, rice and flower petals showering down around us, I felt a strange sense of completion. The wedding day that wasn't meant to be had become exactly what I needed, a new beginning on my own terms. A month into our marriage, Liam and I were settling into a cozy cabin in Vermont for our long-awaited honeymoon. After the emotional whirlwind of the wedding and its aftermath, the peaceful landscape was exactly what we needed. Rolling hills dressed in autumn colors, quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, evenings by the fireplace with books and wine. "You seem different," Liam observed one morning as we hiked along a wooded trail, leaves crunching beneath our boots. "More at peace." I considered this, breathing in the crisp air. "I think I am. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not trying to be someone else's version of me." That evening, I found an old leather journal in a drawer of the cabin. Its pages were blank, inviting. On impulse, I began to write. Not a diary of our honeymoon activities, but letters. Letters I knew I would never send, but needed to write nonetheless. The first was to my mother. "Dear Mom, I used to think your approval was something I needed to earn. Now I understand that the problem was never me. It was your own fears, your own regrets. I hope someday you can see me for who I am, not for the mistakes you think you made. Until then, I'm learning to be okay, without your validation." I wrote to Richard next, the man who had raised me. "You were never demonstrative with your affection, and now I wonder if that was because you always saw me as someone else's child. But you stayed. You provided. You taught me responsibility and integrity. Those things matter, even if our relationship will never be what I once thought it was." To my brothers, I wrote separate letters, one forgiving, one more reserved. To Grandpa, a thank you. To my younger self, an assurance that everything would eventually make sense. And finally, to Elias. "I'm still learning who you are, who we might be to each other. But I'm grateful for your patience, your willingness to meet me where I am. There's no manual for this kind of relationship, no roadmap for finding your father at 27. But I'm glad we're figuring it out together." The act of writing was cathartic, releasing emotions I hadn't even realized I was carrying. When Liam found me curled up by the fireplace, surrounded by filled journal pages, he simply sat beside me, offering his presence without prying. A week later, Grandpa called with news. "There's a women's magazine in Boston that's doing a series on family secrets and their impact," he explained. "I mentioned your story and they're interested. They think it might help others who have discovered similar truths about their origins." I hesitated, uncomfortable with the idea of making my private pain public. "I don't know, Grandpa. You don't have to use real names," he assured me. "But think about it, Evie. Your story could help someone else feel less alone. And telling it might help you, too." After discussing it with Liam, I decided to write the essay. It was difficult, revisiting the shock and betrayal, the anger and confusion. But there was power in shaping the narrative myself, in choosing which parts to share and how to frame them. The piece was published under a pseudonym, but with my real photograph. The truth about my origins, how a wedding rehearsal led to family secrets and self-discovery, the headline read. The response was overwhelming. Emails from readers who had experienced similar revelations, who found courage in my words. My mother, predictably, maintained her silence. The essay didn't name her, but she would have recognized the story. I hadn't expected her to reach out, but some small, childish part of me was still disappointed when she didn't. Richard, however, surprised me. A letter arrived at our home a few weeks after the essay was published, his formal handwriting on the envelope instantly recognizable. Dear Evelyn, it began. I read your piece in the magazine. You write beautifully. You always did have a way with words. I want you to know that I don't blame you for how you feel. I don't know if I did right or wrong by keeping the truth from you all these years, but I hope you can forgive me someday. I may not be your biological father, but I have always been proud to call you my daughter. It wasn't an admission of guilt, not exactly, but it was an acknowledgement of my feelings, which was more than I'd expected. In early October, Elias came to visit us in Vermont. He brought photo albums, old records, stories about his life, pieces of himself he wanted to share with me. I don't want to overwhelm you, he said as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. I don't want to take anything from your life. I just want to be part of what's ahead. I think I'd like that, I told him honestly. It's strange having two fathers. One who raised me, however imperfectly. One who gave me life, who I'm just getting to know. Elias nodded, understanding in his eyes. They say biology isn't destiny, but it is connection. I see myself in you sometimes. The way you move your hands when you talk, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. Small things that remind me we're linked, even after all these years apart. That night, I added another entry to my journal, a letter addressed to both my fathers. One raised me. One gave me life. Both loved me, even if brokenly. And now, as an adult, I get to decide what roles you play in my future. That's my power, my choice. And I choose to find space for both of you on my terms. A week after Elias left, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Jack calling from a new phone. I read your essay, he said without preamble. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry, Evie. For the rehearsal dinner, for taking Mom's side without hearing yours. For a lot of things. His voice was sincere, hesitant. A small opening, perhaps, to rebuild what had been broken. Thank you for calling, I said, meaning it. How are you? We talked for nearly an hour. Awkwardly at first, then with increasing ease. He told me about his job, his new apartment. I told him about Vermont, about writing, about reconnecting with Elias. We carefully avoided mentioning our mother or Nathan, an unspoken agreement to focus on healing our relationship first. As autumn deepened around our cabin, I found myself thinking more and more about the future. One evening, as Liam and I sat by the fireplace, a thought struck me. I want to write a letter to our future child, I said suddenly. Liam looked up from his book, eyebrows raised. Are you trying to tell me something? I laughed.
No, not yet.
But someday. And when that day comes, I want them to have something for me. Something honest about where they came from, about truth and courage and knowing one's worth. The next morning, I began what would be the most important letter of all, addressed to a child who didn't yet exist. My darling, before you were even a possibility, I learned a truth that changed everything I thought I knew about myself. It was painful and disorienting, but also liberating. I want you to know this story not as a burden, but as an inheritance of strength. You come from a complicated family tree with branches that twist and turn in unexpected directions. But each of those branches, the good and the difficult alike, contributed to making me who I am and, by extension, to making you possible. When the world tries to tell you who you are, remember that only you get to decide that. Your identity isn't determined by blood alone, or by names on documents, or by others' expectations. It's shaped by the choices you make, the love you give, the truths you're brave enough to face. I promise to be honest with you, always. I promise to see you for who you are, not who I wish you to be. And I promise that no matter what truths you discover about yourself along the way, my love for you will never waver. With all my heart, your mother. As I sealed this letter in an envelope to be opened years in the future, I felt a sense of completion. The circle that had begun with my mother's secrets was closing with my commitment to honesty. The pain that had started with feeling abandoned at my wedding rehearsal had transformed into the foundation for a stronger, truer version of myself. I wasn't abandoned, after all. I was rerouted. And in finding the truth, I finally found me. What would you do if the family who abandoned you turned out not to be yours at all? If Evelyn's journey of discovering her true identity moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the painful truths, unexpected revelations, and ultimate healing that reshape our lives.